Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another one of the Tour Diary series. It may not look like we're on tour, but this is actually the night before a gig, isn't it?
Where are we going tomorrow?
We're going to a gig up north of England.
Way up north.
Way up north to play for everyone.
Accent North.
Accent North, yeah. You'll be able to hear a difference when someone talks to you at the petrol station. We thought we'd do this little diary series. Actually, before that, let's introduce our guest. Now, I'm not sure when we're doing this and when we're releasing this in conjunction with his first episode, so we'll just introduce him again. This is the Jack J Hutchinson Band's roadie. More than a roadie, though, isn't he? He does so much for us.
Roadie, merch man.
Merch guy, roadie, driver, morale giver, therapist.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm pissed off with Felipe, I come in after the gig, I say, Johnny, Felipe played an offbeat on the second bar, and I just cannot stand and put up with this amateur stuff anymore. And Felipe goes to him and says, Laz, he tuned his string too sharp and it's doing my head in. So anyway,
I just tell him to grow up.
That's it, and that's all you need. So anyway, this is Mr. Johnny Della.
Also known as Tenacious Della.
Tenacious Della
Della.
as well. And like I said, I'm not sure. We've done a few episodes with Johnny as well, so we're not sure where this currently sits in terms of where it comes out. But anyway, Jack J Hutchinson Band's roadie, Mr. Johnny Della. And we were literally just sat here watching a documentary about one of our favourite albums that we're going to do an episode on. And drinking beer.
I can't say the name of the beer because YouTube is going to block the video if I say the name of the beer.
We're drinking a beer.
Not because of the beer.
Yeah, we're drinking a beer that is linked to the recent pandemic. I don't know if you know what's going on.
Oh, you can't say pandemic either. We're going to be blocked.
So can
you just bleep that?
There's going to be an information button underneath. Says information about this pandemic. But anyway, we're sat here watching a documentary about an album. We've got some beers. We're ready just to get an early night, so we get off nice and quickish for the gig tomorrow. And Johnny asked myself and Felipe, well, it wasn't a question really, it was a statement. So Johnny, would you like to say your question statement again, and we can make it the theme of this Tour Diary series episode?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was just that I'd noticed that like a few bands that I see is that they've got the image, but they're not that good, but they've got all the image. But my question was, it's like, it was more just a statement. It's like that. What? Where does the talent come from? Like, it's like bands. For me, bands have to work at what they do, but is it? It's got to be more than just talent. You have to really like work at it. And Felipe, for me, he come up with a fantastic analogy of talent is only gets you so far, but you need to take it on more than just having natural talent. But what I see is a lot of bands have a lot of image, but not a lot of substance. And for me, with the documentary we was watching, the band in particular that we was watching, they were great musicians, and then from being great musicians, they could then have the swagger around the stage,
because they'd already accomplished,
because they got to that stage where they were good at what they did.
Yeah. And also, if you can play that well, if you're so technically good at what you do, you don't need to think about playing anymore. Yeah. So when something comes out naturally, oh, that guy's so comfortable with his guitar playing, it's because he practiced so much he doesn't need to think about it anymore. Yeah. So if you don't need to think about your playing, then you can walk around, you can do all the performance bits, you can do all the visual stuff. I do believe that a gig is an audio-visual experience. If you just want to listen to music, you can listen to your CD or Spotify or vinyl. You don't need to go to a gig. You go to a gig to see some performance as well. And I believe that if you're really good at playing, but you don't have anything to show on stage, it might get boring. But some people are way too focused on looking good on stage and performing well visually, but they sometimes are not up to the standards in terms of playing. But loads of good bands, they can do all of it. They can they can have a really, really nice visual performance whilst playing their instruments to a really high level. What do you think, Laz?
I think a lot of Queen's music, when you think about it, when they're playing it to the level that they are playing it, that allows for a sense of musical freedom to come within a performance. So actually, funnily enough, right now, I am learning Queen songs to do a Queen tribute band next Saturday. And so I've had to learn 20 Queen songs, and they've all been based on the Live at Wembley and Live at Budapest live shows. So I've just been watching them on YouTube for the last few days. And what gets me is when I'm transcribing the chords and trying to figure out the structures of the songs, there are so many times where unusually it will go like just one bar over. So instead of an 8 bar, it will be 9 bars. Instead of 12 bars, it will be 13. And I thought, God, they can't have planned this. So this must have been a live jam. But that means that Roger Taylor was prepared with his fill, and the rest of the band knew what they were waiting for a particular fill before the chorus comes back in. Yeah. And when you have that kind of knowledge and you can rely upon your bandmates to that extent, then the performance comes naturally. Because like you said, the song is ingrained in your head because you've played it so many times.
Exactly. And when you're on tour, after preparing yourself, without the band, and then you join the band and you play 15, 20 consecutive nights, and everything just becomes more like muscle memory, as some people say. You just do it, and then you can actually focus on what you do on stage. You can look at the audience and try to react to them and
put
make
the devil horns up,
yeah,
the fists in the air. It's
Whatever
funny you
do.
say about the muscle memory thing though, because there was one of my tutors, whenever I learn, whenever he gave us bass homework, this is from the uni we were at, he would say, don't learn it until you can play it. Don't play it until you can play it once. Play it until you never get it wrong.
Yeah, there's some people say like a good musician will practice until they can get it right.
Yeah.
A professional musician will practice until they can't get it wrong.
Which means like the muscle memory.
Exactly. So you get something right. Johnny was asking us about kind of where do you draw the line between natural talent and actual playing, professional level playing.
Yeah.
If you're on stage performing to an audience, that for me is you practice until you get it right. After you get it right, you do it again 20 times, 100 times, and then you're never ever going to get it wrong again. That's the level people expect you to perform live. And I think what you mentioned, the analogy I made about. But I've learned this from.
You should say that again.
I'm gonna mention the guy who said that to me, Nestor, who is a Cuban musician, fantastic, big band conductor, great musician, and he said that someone asked. I think I asked him about talent. Where does talent come from? How much talent does someone need, and is it enough? Because I never quite believed in talent, like natural talent myself. Maybe because I don't have any.
He just hits things all day.
It's
just lucky that they're in time.
Basically, what he said was, a natural talent is like anything that you get for free when you're born. Like, you can be tall. There's some advantage to being tall. But you can't get to the top of a building by just being tall. So you need a ladder. So the ladder would be the practice time. Let's put it like that. Someone who is shorter than you might reach the same,
goal.
Same goal, get to the top of the same building by just using the same ladder, which is the effort you're going to put into it. And if you're taller, you could reach that point a bit earlier. But it depends, Maybe the guy who's shorter is going to just put more effort into it and just climb the ladder faster than you. So it's all about talent can only take you so far. I don't believe any of those great bands that we love. They were there. They reached that level by just being natural players. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. I believe there's lots of effort. You put so many hours into your task of playing your instrument or singing, that it just becomes so natural and so easy that when you go on stage, your only focus is performance.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you said that about the beat. You said that thing about the hours, and I read somewhere that the Beatles had played together for 10,000 hours before they even became the Beatles.
Before the first album.
Oh, is that it? Before
Yeah.
the first album. So this is when they were doing their skiffle band, they were doing a covers band, they were doing some rock and roll stuff. The Beatles had played together for 10,000 hours before the first album. Now, that's not just something that is kind of there saying, okay, well, it's good that we've done that. That's essential.
How
To
many
have
of,
that much stuff, to
How
have that
many
much
of
time
the-
together.
how many of those gigs were not that good?
Yeah.
You know, we
Yeah.
don't know because they were not recorded.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's why the older classic rock bands that have been around for 50 odd years, like when you look at the Stones, in fact, there's a whole catalogue like Aerosmith. Is that why that they are still going strong? Because they've worked hard for what they've got and they're still good, and there's no one coming up and pushing them off because they mixed the talent with the hard work, and they're still there and they're still doing it.
Well, I won't say that people nowadays are not making the effort to get somewhere. There's loads of young musicians who are really talented, and not only natural talent, but the ability of practicing for hours and hours, and really they really take it seriously. But even for us now, and for many people of our generation, younger people, it's so much easier to put an album together. That doesn't mean you're going to make a great album, but just to give you one example, you can get into a studio and record one bar of bass guitar, drums, or vocals, whatever, and you can loop that, copy and paste. That's what technology allows you to do so quickly nowadays. And imagine a band like Yes or Emerson, Lake and Palmer, those guys who would write a 17-minute song, and they had to perform from start to finish before multi-tracking, before you know, or even after they had the option to overdub some stuff. The core of the song, like rhythm, guitar, bass, drums, keyboard, maybe they would be recorded live. So you need to start from the beginning, from the very first bar, get to the end of the song. If you're recording that 17-minute song and you do a mistake at 16 and a half, you might have to start from scratch.
And that's where the talent comes from, isn't it? You know, you had to perform upon demand that level of music that you were saying, the bands like Yes, Pink Floyd, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, even I suppose Iron Maiden to an example in their early days. To have that level of talent, that is a step above the rest, isn't it?
It is. And even now, so you think about, we just listened to the new Iron Maiden's single, and it's those guys with modern technology. It's not like denying what modern recording technology can give you. It's actually, if you're good enough to the point you can just record a 10-minute track without a second chance, you just do it because you're really prepared. Imagine how easy it is to have the chance to record a block of 4 bars and then do it again and do it again. So those guys are really good at doing things with one attempt. So if you give them more, that is so much easier for them. That's why they've been doing this for decades, and they can still do it right. They can still, and maybe I could even dare to say that guys like Iron Maiden, they do it better nowadays. I think they sound better than ever.
Yeah, I think that they've grabbed the technology, they've got the talent, they've got the years behind them, and they've put it all together. And this is why they come out with album after album that are they just never bring out a bad album.
No, I think it's interesting when you think that we have to remember as well that this is their job. This is their job. The same way that, you know, we've all had jobs as well where you would
Sorry.
That's okay. We'd have jobs where you know, any job that wasn't music, you'd sort of get into a rhythm of it. I mean, before I was a musician, I worked at a bar in North London, and the same process. When the glasses are dirty, you take them there, you wash them, and then you go, when the keg's empty, you go and refill the beer. If something's out, you go and bring bottles of it up. It just becomes formulaic after a while, and I'm talking formulaic as in you'd know that Saturday night was going to be busy at a bar, but and that's over weeks. But with Iron Maiden, over literal decades, the process has been the same. Go out on tour the latest album, take a few months for yourself to, you know, re-energize, get together, rehearse and write some new tracks, rehearse and record the new tracks, put the album out, tour the album, and repeat.
Yeah.
Repeat every 2 or 3 years. So this is just their job. It's second nature for them.
But
and whilst they are incredibly talented,
it sounds easy.
it's just usual for them.
I can imagine that they've still got to come up with the goods.
Yeah, and that's where the talent comes from.
Yeah, and the pressure must be even higher for them, because if they release a bad album, like, everybody's going to be on it.
It's really interesting what you said there about having to do it time and time again, because I listened to the album. Okay, this will be a spoiler of when we recorded this. The new Iron Maiden album, Senjutsu, came out this morning, and today's the 3rd of September. So at midnight last night, I stayed up and listened to the album. I wanted to hear it as soon as it came out. And I heard several riffs and solos and guitar harmonies that the first one bar I'd heard in another Iron Maiden song, but the second half was completely different. So one of the songs had a guitar harmony part that sounded like it was from Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, but I heard it and the second half was different, and I thought, this is how a band like Iron Maiden have survived. They've recycled ideas but changed them completely. And when you're getting to their 17th album,
Yeah.
they need they have a very distinct sound, Iron Maiden, but they can still come up with new material.
Is that what talent is in the end of the day? For me,
I think it's songwriting talent.
Well, exactly, because talent in that sense comes from practice anyway. If you practice so much, and writing songs requires practice as well, because you might write a beautiful song that doesn't sound good. So what you do it again.
Yeah.
You try to do it, but you change one note or two, you change the lyrics. So that is practicing. You practice songwriting, you practice everything. There is a formula to everything. Even when you're doing something that you're kind of aiming for total innovation, you're going to find your own formula, but it's still a formula.
Yeah.
There is still a method to anything you do.
But regardless of formulas, the work still has to be put in.
Exactly.
The time, the energy, the enthusiasm, the passion, the late nights, the blood, the sweat, the tears, all has to go into getting better and improving yourself.
Exactly. And if you think about the younger generation, some people would say that, it's easy for boys and girls nowadays because they can just, they have thousands of free videos on internet about how to play guitar, this and that. But the problem is, with all that information, they still have to filter that information and take what they really need in order to improve as musicians. And they have one thing that for me is really hard. When you release some music nowadays, you're not only competing with your own generation, you're competing with the Beatles, with Zeppelin,
Forever,
with Thin Lizzy, with Queen, everyone. Everything that has ever been released is out there for free, thanks to technology. So all the information you need to improve your skills and become a better musician is there. But once you get that, once you learn, how to play an instrument and write songs, you're going to compare yourself to everyone who has done that before you. And that's quite scary.
But if you think, do you guys know the band Greta Van Fleet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You do, you know them.
But yeah,
they're this young up and coming band. I think they're from California. And their first EP or album basically sounded a lot like Led Zeppelin. Now, we're not talking about copying riffs or nicking lyrics, but just the vibe, the guitar riff followed by a cool bass fill and then a very Bonham-y drum beat going. They were compared and they were quite criticised. Vocal style as well, that's actually one of the most important
Robert
parts.
Plant likes them.
Yeah, he does,
but
But they've suffered as well, just from to me, they are a great, young, innovative rock and roll band who have come up with the goods. They're a talented bunch of guys. They've put the effort in, but all they get for their efforts is, are you just trying to sound like Led Zeppelin?
But we've had this before with Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was a Led Zeppelin ripoff. We even had Ozzy Osbourne as written Lead Clones. Or no, that was Gary Moore with Ozzy Osbourne singing at Lead Clones, and it was all directed at Kingdom Come, a German band.
Right.
So they've had it all before, but I loved Kingdom Come. Lenny Wolf was the lead singer in the band, and they just said, "Oh yeah, he's trying to be Robert Plant," but it's like, But
everyone was trying to be like him.
Yeah, but Robert Plant was an influence on him.
An icon,
and
exactly.
It's like you want to be like your heroes. You just want to and if you can pull it off, and he could. And it's the same with Greta Van Fleet, that they like the Led Zeppelin sound. Now they've sort of gone on record as denying it, but it's quite obvious that one of their biggest influences are Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
But the music they're putting out is quality, and they're good at what they do, and they've got talent, and they're working at it, and it's right there. You're never going to please everybody, but good luck to them.
Well, they've persevered as well. They've stuck
And
at
it's
it,
like-
and now they found their own identity, haven't they? They still sound a bit Zeppelin-y, but it's theirs now.
Shouldn't we allow people to copy someone in order to learn how to do stuff? That's what we do, you know.
Yeah.
When you learn to do anything, when you learn to cook or drive a car, you're copying someone. You're copying your teacher. You're copying whoever is showing you how to do that thing. So if you're too young and you've listened to one band like for most of your young life, and then you just start writing songs that sound like your favorite band, should it just stop there? No, I don't want to do this because I don't want to write any songs anymore because I don't have my own style. Or maybe you're too young for that. Maybe just keep doing it, and maybe your album is going to sound just like someone from the 70s or 80s or 90s, but your next album is going to have some sort of identity. We came all the way here listening to Rush. I mean, not all the way, but we listened to what song was that? Time Stands Still.
Oh, Time Stands Still, yeah.
From
yeah.
we forgot the name of the album.
It wasn't Grace, because I said it was Grace Under Pressure, but it was actually from Hold Your Fire.
Hold Your Fire. So great album, great song, and that is very electronic. They have a guest singer in the song. It's maybe more keyboards than guitar in the mix. It's really, really interesting, really different.
Yeah.
Really 80s. But the first Rush album, you're gonna agree with me, it sounds like Led Zeppelin. And they were criticized by that. Oh, it's too much like Led Zeppelin. So yeah, but that's the reference we have. We wanted to depart from this and get somewhere, and they did get somewhere.
And find their own identity in the end, which a lot of bands are doing. But I still don't think that there's anything wrong with if a band wants to sound like Thin Lizzy. That's great. It's like you might not be as good as them, but we can see where your influences have come from, and your heart is in it. And if you're good enough, you'll make it. And that's what, going back to what we said, you need the talent, but you've also got to work at it. Before you can't just have like the image, which is exactly what I think we first was talking about. It's like you can't say, yeah, I'm going to be like the new AC/DC, but you need the talent and work on it before the image.
Yeah.
And sometimes I worry that some of the bands I see have got the image, and it's...
When you say image, you don't just mean visually, you mean the act, right? Their character.
Yeah.
Not just what they're wearing or what they look like on stage.
You're talking about grunge, wouldn't you? Like that people seem to have a lack of visual preparation, but that's a style in itself.
Yeah. It's like, it's okay if you got the swagger on stage. Like a lot of, like we've seen, like Freddie Mercury and even David Lee Roth, like those.
I love it.
Well, yeah, it's great to have that swagger and to have the look, to have that rock look. But that only works for me. It only works if you're good.
If you can back it up.
Yeah.
If you can close your eyes and still enjoy it.
But what's the music like?
Yeah.
And to me, that's the key. You have to deliver the music first, and then you can have the swag around the stage. And
it's kind of the icing on the top, isn't it?
That's. I think that's where we first started this conversation of like what is like talent, and it's like how much is talent, and how much do you have to have a bit of talent and work on it. And then you come up with that analogy, and it's like perfect. Yeah, I see that. It's like talent can only take you so far, but you've got to make like the rest of it. I've had no talent, and honestly, and when I'm talking to these guys are so talented, and when they're talking about bars and the music, and it's like honestly, it's like they're talking Martian to me. I haven't got a clue
it up, man.
No, you might well be, but it all seems to. it impresses me anyway.
Johnny, Felipe only has bars ahead of you in musical knowledge.
Yeah, that's it. I don't. Do you know chords and scales? I can only count to 4.
He doesn't know what a G sharp is. He just can count to 4 and look at two bars.
That's it.
No,
G's a letter.
These guys are
It's not
talented.
a chord.
But it's like this is honestly, when I listen to you two talk, especially when you start talking about music and you get into the minutiae of like
The intricacies of it.
Yeah, it's the honestly, you've lost me, and it is an education for someone like me that I haven't got a musical bone in my body.
Yeah.
But I know I love music and I know what I like.
Maybe you can
It's
be a
like-
drummer if you don't understand music.
But
It's the closest you can
Yeah,
get to
It's-
be a musician
honestly,
is
it's
to be
an
a drummer.
education.
to
listening
attest
you
of
two.
what Johnny has just said, I have had to work my arse off to become the level of bass player I have, and I don't mean that in any sort of, I suppose, arrogant, confident way. But when I started playing bass, I found it very, very hard, and it took me a long time to get what we would call good. Now, part of that was, or a large part of that was that I went to the Institute of Music in London to study. It's obviously where we met each other, and the lessons there were fantastic. But all the teachers were there doing was passing on their knowledge, and like you said, we have to be the ones to filter it out. So what did I do? I practiced 4 hours a day for 3 years in a row, and that's why I can now back up my talent, or back up my stage persona, my confidence, my stage presence. I can back that up with musical ability for 2 reasons that link to what we've said. One, I have worked at it, and I know that I can play these bass lines because I've worked my arse off getting to the level. And 2, because when we're on tour and we've played the songs 30 times, 5 times in rehearsal,
They
and
just
then we
flow.
it flows. I don't even need to. We're at the stage now where I'm not even really looking at what I'm playing because I know where the notes are. I know what's coming next. So I think what you just said and my response maybe potentially answers one of your questions, especially for me at least personally. It's like I've had to work hard to get to this level, and I am by far, or no, what I'm trying to say, I'm very far away from being the best bassist on the planet. There are people, thousands of people who are incredibly talented bass players who work even harder, practice for 2 more hours per day. They go out to jam bars, to jam sessions.
bars.
They go out to bars to do jam sessions every night because they just want to play with people who are better themselves and better themselves because of that.
I think performance is a result of preparation. I always say that it's an endless cycle. Performance, and you do the preparation and then you perform, and then you think about what else do I need to improve my performance, and then you prepare yourself again. And the performance itself, if you're touring, you don't have too much time to practice. You're just like traveling all the time. So what happens is the performance becomes the preparation for the next performance.
Yeah.
But it's always a learning process.
Well,
never ends.
That's why it's the old thing that people say, yeah, by midway through the tour, we was really tight.
Yeah.
Because it's a little bit loose at the start. I mean, I'm not a musician, but I only listen to what bands say, and it's like, and I must admit, I see it, because sometimes I see a band that start a tour, and then by the end of it, it is like, whoa,
On fire.
this is just so good.
You should never record a live album the first week of touring. That's
Yeah.
just that.
There's better to come, put it that way. But you know what? A tutor of mine, who was it? I can't remember. But he said that he's gone to see the Rolling Stones every year for the last 30 or 40 years, since he's been musically, enlightened by their music. And he said that every time he saw them, 85, 90, 96, 2010, every time he's seen them, when the Rolling Stones start a song, it's quite sloppy. Charlie Watts is the only one keeping it together, and Keith Richards and who's the bass player, Ronnie Wood, they come in, they're a bit sloppy for a few
Ronnie
bars.
Wood's a guitar player.
Is he? Who's the bass player then?
The bass player now is Daryl Jones.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
who was it before?
It was, what's his name? You know his name,
The Rolling Stones bass player.
the first one.
Oh, they're
How did we
Crystal
all forget?
Palace fan.
The guy who owned the restaurant. We know everything about him.
Yeah,
but
we
his
know.
name-
Oh, come on, he's a huge star. And he went off to France.
We literally know this
We
guy's
can't
life.
Google this.
No.
If we Google this, embarrassing. That's how long it's going to take for us to figure out.
Ronnie Wood.
There's the
Charlie
guy who
Watts.
died. Brian Jones is the guy who died. And then
Charlie
you have
Watts, Keith Richards.
He's a Crystal Palace fan.
the Crystal Palace fan.
He loves Crystal Palace
Yeah.
that much. He's a fan
Didn't they
twice.
have? Was it? I got my mind set on you. Was it that him?
I think so. God, I forgot his name.
I got
Is he
my
still
mind
alive?
set-
He
Yeah.
is still alive. Yeah.
It's just. I can picture him now. How can all
How
three of
can the
us?
three of us
How
don't
can all
remember?
three of us
And we know all
forget-
of Dennis, but
It's
this
like,
guy.
it's like I can see his
And this-
name.
right, it is.
I'm gonna-
There's a Y in his name somewhere.
You think?
I'm sure.
Okay. I'm going to be the one to
Bill-
find out.
Bill Wyman.
Bill Wyman.
Yeah, that's fine.
Bill Wyman.
Before I googled it, I didn't Google it.
Oh, that is shame on
God,
us.
Bill Wyman.
Honestly.
We're so
Thank
sorry.
God we're going
we
to be
love
the
you.
world's worst. We're the world's worst pub quiz team, aren't we?
For the Rolling Stones.
For-
yeah.
We're
Well,
terrible with quizzes.
and it
We
amazing
forget
how-
everything when we need to remember.
Anyway.
this.
Back to the Stones live.
Yeah.
Bill Wyman, Ronnie Wood, and Keith Richards would always take a few bars.
to get into the groove.
Yeah, into it.
Just like we took a few bars.
We took a few bars, yes.
But that to me is saying, and this is how I look at it. If I take a step back, they could put more time into becoming a tighter band if that's the case.
Yeah.
But they don't need to. Their talent has already taken them as far up the ladder as they need to go.
And the songwriting
And
as well.
the talent of the songwriting has already taken them to the top of the ladder. They could become a tighter band, but they don't need to. The audience doesn't care. Why would you?
And that's why they had Charlie Watts and they had B. Wyman. They had what's his
If
name?
you keep
Darren
the rhythm
Jones.
section strong,
Exactly. The
everyone
groove
can
is
follow.
there, and
Yeah.
then the other guys just play on top of it.
Yeah.
There's one thing though we're talking about. I just want to go back to one interesting thing about trying to sound like someone. When you're starting as a musician, there's going to be, loads of people say, "Oh, you shouldn't copy anyone." That's just impossible when you're starting because you need references. You need to try to sound like someone, and the whole idea of having an identity before copying someone I just can't accept this. What you need to do, like if you're copying one guy, let's say I'm a drummer, so I want to be like Ringo Starr. So I learned 20 Beatles songs, note per note, just like Ringo. Then I'm going to sound a bit like Ringo. Then that's my only influence. That might be bad because I can never be as good as Ringo in that particular style. And then I start copying whatever Alan White from Yes or John Bonham or whoever I want to copy. And if I start, mixing bits and pieces from all those guys, unless you are a professional drummer, you won't be able to identify every single influence. Then that's where identity actually happens. Is when you copy so many different musicians that you don't even know where the ideas are coming from, because no ideas in this day and age in music, they're not no ideas are 100% original. You're mixing and matching stuff.
When I used to study classical music as well, and I'd forever be going over symphonies and studying and looking at this one and that one and concertos and everything, and you'd find a bar of music and you'd say, hold on, that looks familiar, and then you'd play it on the piano. And I was with my teacher and I said, that's, I was studying Shostakovich's symphony, and I was like, that bar, that's...
Never heard of that.
Is this the Long Live Classic Music podcast now?
It's getting too intellectual for a rock show.
When I saw a
you
bar...
can just skip for 1 minute and then you keep watching.
I saw 2 bars of music that had the notes on, and I said that this reminds me of something, and the teacher said, yeah, well, what he's doing there is he's quoting Beethoven, which means he's taken 2 bars exactly from one of Beethoven's symphonies and put it in. Now, you could call that a homage, which is tipping his hat to Beethoven, saying thank you for the ideas. Or, as my teacher said, you call it quoting. Now, what's the difference with Shostakovich quoting several bars of Beethoven's music exactly, and Led Zeppelin doing a little guitar intro? This is the thing about identity. Why is one side different to the other?
And you can get any songs with like 37 chords and strip them down to the same 3 blues chords.
Yeah.
They all come somehow from those 3 chords from blues music. And in
Well,
popular
I'm going
music,
as if I know, but I'm just.
but
haven't got a clue.
it really is. If you search for the roots of any popular music, you're gonna end up finding Muddy Waters and Bo Diddley and all those guys
Even-
who started
yeah.
way before rock and roll.
Even
was,
today's music,
I believe
there'll
so.
be a normal path, Johnny. You kind of go today's music, the Beatles, the blues.
Well,
And,
I was
there's a few other bands in there, but we need to give the Beatles their due, like for changing pop
Well,
music.
if you try to like really trace back to the styles and you listen to like pop music like Jessie J, she is a big fan of Prince, who was a big fan of Jimi Hendrix, who was a big fan of Muddy Waters, who started out by trying to sound like Lead Belly or whatever.
Yeah.
So and then you go back to the same route. So Lead Belly was also an influence for Creedence and Paul McCartney and everyone else. So everyone comes from the same tradition. So everyone was copying someone and finding their own way of doing things and kind of accidentally coming up with new ideas. And that's what talent is. Maybe it's to be brave enough to take ideas from someone else and turn them into your own style. You know?
But now the newer bands are taking ideas from what they consider to be the old bands. Like you're talking about Metallica, Iron Maiden, which to them are really old bands. To me, they're just still like because I grew up with them.
You didn't. It's impossible.
But,
Are you older than me, Johnny? Yeah,
a couple of years.
Yeah.
Just a couple of years. But the newer bands, like they probably, because they weren't even alive when probably the Black Album came out or Appetite for Destruction came out. So to me, the Black Album and Appetite for Destruction are new albums.
Yeah.
Like they're just like, so if a new band comes along, and of course it's like, yeah, that sounds like something like, I don't know, My Michelle or something from Appetite for Destruction. Like, would you nick that from there? And it's like, but they're looking at albums where they weren't even alive. So it's like when we start talking about looking back at the really old blues people, it's like, so it's the same thing. But these young kids, and they're just doing what everybody else has done, what probably Robert Plant has done before, taking old stuff from stuff before he was alive. That's what the newer bands are doing now. That's what I see it, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
There's nothing wrong. It's just that, like you were saying, this day and age, music is everywhere. So when you take something from somewhere, especially from a band that like are still playing now, so if you take something from Metallica, it's like we're going to pick up on that straight away. But back in the old days when Led Zeppelin picked up plenty of stuff from the blues, no one knew anything about it apart from the people that were in it.
Quite literally
so
copying the lyrics,
now.
no one would notice.
Yeah, but now nothing is hidden anymore. But there is a getting back to probably the original thing I said about what is talent, and it's like, how do you define that? It's like there's a guitarist that he's dead now, but I don't think anyone, the nearest person to come to playing guitar like he does for me is Joe Bonamassa has come near to him. It's Gary Moore, because every time I saw Gary Moore, there was nothing that Gary Moore couldn't do. It was like I'd feel safe when I knew when he was playing. It wasn't, he's not going to muck this up. You just knew that it's going to be a solid performance.
How much preparation came before that performance? You know?
So, and the only one that comes near, really, to me, is when I see Joe Bonamassa play, it's like, he's not going to muck up. But, sorry, my point was, there was a little story that I was just going to say, that Gary Moore, even when he was at his peak, still was like learning, or he wasn't at his peak at this particular time, but you could see the hours that he put in, because there's a story by Scott Gorham. He said they were on tour in the States, I think they might have been playing with Queen, but anyway, they went to a show to see I think it might have been Aerosmith or someone, but the support band that night was Van Halen.
Oh.
And Eddie Van Halen started doing all this stuff on the guitar. And Scott Gorham says that Gary Moore, after Eddie Van Halen had finished playing like he'd never seen before, he went straight back to the hotel room and he had to try and figure out how did he play that. And this was Scott Gorham telling the story about Gary Moore. And he said he turned around and after the first song, he'd gone back to the hotel room
to learn it.
And he saw it, and he said he saw him like, and he said he's trying to figure out. So that to me is dedication.
And
that's drive to improve.
Yeah,
exactly. And what I said to you about curiosity. If you have that level of curiosity, you want to really dig deep into whatever you find about your instrument, about your voice, about music. You know, some people they can watch someone playing like Van Halen and think, "Well, that's really interesting." Well, whatever. Let me just play a video game or read a book. And some musicians will be, "Oh, that I've never seen that anything like that before. I want to try it." So that level of curiosity, that's a talent. A talent in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the drive and the talent, and that is why I just think Gary Moore pushed himself as far as he could possibly go, and that he just, if anyone could pick up a guitar and do whatever they wanted with it, it was him, because he figured it out. And it was like, and it wasn't to, I got the impression it wasn't to rip off away. In fact, none of his songs ever sounded like anything that Eddie Van Halen did, but it was just, he wanted to know, how did he do it? He had to figure it out. Like, how's he making these sounds?
I think you'll find a lot of artists and musical figures like that will often be the same. I think Hendrix, Zappa, Gary Moore. There's a bass player I know called Victor Wooten, who's probably considered the #1 bass player in the world right now. And he wrote a book called The Music Lesson, which is very philosophical and it's quite spiritual. But the whole point of it, to cut a long story short, is that the learning never stops. And I think you can say that as a guy who's been playing for 20 years. I can say it as a guy who's only been playing 8 years. Iron Maiden will say it as guys who've been playing for nearly 50 years. The learning never stops. And as long as you can make money from it, you can enjoy it, you get satisfaction out of it, why would you not want to improve?
That's exactly
for one of those
Felipe
reasons.
was saying
Exactly.
on the way out.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
you've
we
had to
kept
learn,
talking about this on the way. Yeah.
Well, because you've had to learn some soul.
I played with a soul band. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, I can do it, but what does that mean to me? It's like I need to kind of not think about my rock and roll drum fills in order to play that style properly. And if I've played a whole soul gig, which was the last gig I've played, and now I'm playing with Jack tomorrow, I'm going to bring a little bit of that soul into rock and roll.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That, to me, that's a good thing.
Maybe I'm going to be slightly more groovy tomorrow because of that.
Oh, I look.
I'll take note. I'll let you guys know after the gig tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if I sound like crap, don't let them know.
Yeah.
So.
But anyway, I think that brings the. Do you have anything to say, John?
No, I was just going to say, every day's a school day, even for you musos. It's like, I mean, well, I suppose in any walk of life, really, it's like I have to learn new technology. No, I'm a service engineer, and new technology comes along, and I have to learn it. So it's the same. It's just whatever we do, we have to learn. Every day's a school day, but it's nice to know that you guys are still like, it's still a challenge. Like,
there's so much.
We've just started.
I can't even. I can
but
think.
I watch you guys play, and it's like you're right. As I say, I don't play an instrument, but I look at you guys and I just think you're on stage, and I know that you know what you're doing because you're having so much fun. Because if you wasn't, if you were struggling with it, you wouldn't have the big smiles on your face, and you wouldn't be standing up and bashing your drums because you know what you're doing.
But you know, when we play a brand new song, like something that maybe Jack has just written the song and recorded another day, whatever, and then you need to perform it live, you're going to see a different visual performance for that one. You're going to see us looking a bit more serious,
but
a bit more focused, like...
You never show that, though. You don't show it,
you
but
think
everyone's
so.
seen it.
Well,
You hide it well.
I know what he means because I tried to do that stuff. That's our professionalism. I think we can't look like we're playing a new song. For the
In
first
my
time.
case, it's because I was an actor. You know, I'm not joking. I have to say I did acting for a while, and I know how to pretend I know what I'm doing even when I'm not.
And that's what he
Can
said.
I just say, my whole life is just an act, just to get through the days.
That's the best quote of the day. Shall we end on that?
My whole life is an act.
That's what it
only,
feels
if it
like.
doesn't, only if it doesn't detract from the fact that you've got to work hard and practice. But yes, other than that,
That's still
my
an
whole
act.
life is an act.
Is it an
Yeah,
act?
That's
exactly.
the title of your biography. Isn't it?
My whole life is an act, Johnny Della. And we'll end on that note. So thank you everyone for joining us. Massive thanks to Johnny for joining us. Like we said, we don't know where this is going to slot in. We've got a few episodes planned with Johnny. Maybe some are out by now. Maybe this is the first you hear of it. So thank you very much for guesting on the Tour Diary series,
you.
Johnny.
Yeah,
All
and
good.
long live rock and roll.
Always, yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you. You can find us on our social media. We are at longliveRNRpod on Instagram and Twitter, and you can search the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast on YouTube and Facebook. He is at feed_the drummer. I am at Laz Unleashed. You don't do Instagram.
I'm nowhere.
He's just Johnny Della.
I'm just
He's the
nowhere.
mystery of the band. He just turns up. But anyway, yeah. So anything to say, Felipe?
Just keep on rocking, everyone.
Thank you guys, and as always, long live rock and roll.